You've probably tuned in because, like me, you love the English countryside, English architecture, maybe reminders of home, or perhaps you live in a city where you don't see this very often. Today I'm in the village of Bowerchalk, halfway between Salisbury and Shaftesbury. Shaftesbury, of course, is famous for Gold Hill, the scene of the old vintage Hovis advert. Remember that one? This is one of the most pretty villages in England. There's a farm behind me, you can hear the farm work. Hundreds of birds in the trees. And it's a mild February day. Can't wait to explore this church. And as I take some refuge from the wind, the full majesty of this building is on display. There's an extremely famous author buried here. I often find personal connections on these visits. And this one, no less so. Crossing my final stile onto Church Road, Bowerchalk. Feeling pleasantly warm after my walk. And the steps up to the church. You can just about hear the cows across the field where I've come from, over in the barn. I couldn't have chosen a better day. This is spring-like. Of course, we're in the middle of winter, but it doesn't feel like that. I think I'll show you the grave of said famous author before we go inside. Around to the rear of the church and a spacious graveyard. This is the Chalk Valley, hence Bowerchalk, Broad Chalk. We're fairly close to Stratford Tony, where I've recorded a couple of videos. I've also been to Bishopstone, Alverdiston, my first ever organ road trip, which is further in that direction. And I'm looking for the grave . I'm looking for the humble grave of a world-famous author whose career began as a schoolmaster at Bishop's, my school. There, over here. It says here, remember with love, William Golding, 1911 to 1993, and Anne Golding, 1912 to 1995. So a world-famous author, most well known of course for Lord of the Flies, partly inspired by the boys at Bishop's. My dad started school there shortly after Golding left his teaching post in 1962. According to him, William Golding's nickname was Scruff. I shouldn't say that near his grave, should I? Lord of the Flies is about a group of boys who become stranded on an uninhabited island and it's about their feeble and disastrous attempts to create order. It's funny what you can find if you look closely enough, just a few miles from home. And on that note, let's step inside. Too dark to see, but what you can hear, of course, is the gentle ticking of the church clock. I'm trying to find the door now. There it is. So, welcome my friends to Holy Trinity Church in Bowerchalk. Silent and peaceful, in idyllic pastoral surroundings. I, for one, could not think of a better place to spend my time. In complete solitude here. And there, of course, is the pipe organ, which we will investigate and make music with in a few moments' time. I can hear the wind rushing through the trees outside. A small but imposing space. The light casting magnificent rays through this window. Flags and a plaque commemorating the soldiers of this parish who fell in the Great War, 1914 to 1919. A tightly knit community with this church at its centre for the best part of 1,000 years. The church, named Holy Trinity in the mid-19th century, is built of ashlar. It has a chancel and a nave with transept chapels. The font is 12th century. The oldest parts of the building, the transept arches and part of the nave's north wall, including the doorway, survive from an earlier cruciform church without aisles. The porch and tower were added in the 15th century, and new windows in the transepts. The tower needed repairs in 1662, and in 1820 the upper part of it was rebuilt, then heightened in 1865 to 66 under the direction of T.H. Wyatt. You'll remember him, that architect who restored the church at Wilsford in the Woodford Valley. At this time, the south aisle was added, the chancel and part of the nave were rebuilt, and the west gallery, which presumably would have housed musicians, was removed. From the 11th century, Bowerchalk was served by Broadchalk Church, the next village, until its own church was built around 1300. At that time, it was called a chapel of Broadchalk. The vicarage was built between 1298 and 1307, but the inhabitants were buried at Broadchalk until 1506. I've had my lunch, and now I'm going to do what I do best. Let's see what kind of machine we've got here. This is a one-manual organ. It was built by Francis Booth of Wakefield. On the right and the left are the stops. This organ has a straight pedal board. That means I can play the bass line with my feet. Integral part of playing the church organ. I can just hear a bit of air leaking when I pull out the solutional. We'll have to work our way around that. I might be able to get rid of that problem just by playing it. I'm going to find a place to put my microphone so you can hear this organ the way it should be heard. This is always complicated because you have to get the levels right on the microphone and you have to find the microphone. I have no idea where it is. Banana. There we go, microphone. So let's go and find somewhere to put this at the back of the church so we can get the whole acoustic of the church without too much blower sound. You don't want to hear too much hissing when you're listening to this thing. So if I place the microphone here at the back of the nave, you get the full acoustic of the church, the organ blends better, and you shouldn't get too much hissing from the organ blower. Right, microphone in place. Lights are in place. You need lights because there's no natural light over by organ consoles normally. Hopeless. This is just the kind of charming, rustic sound that you would expect in a village church in England. You can hear some breathiness from the organ, some huffing in the pedals, and of course a hissing from the blower. But isn't that sheen of imperfection what makes these hymns so glorious in a building like this? This, my friends, is why I come out here and do this. It gives you a flavour of the surroundings that I'm in. If you've never visited England, this is England to me. If you know England well, I hope you feel nostalgic and your heart is warmed by the sounds of these instruments. I've always wanted to do a video called How to Make an Out-of-Tune Organ Sound Beautiful, but I find that a rather cruel title. So I'll include that here instead. And really, the main rules are: use the open diapason. Rule number 2, use the open diapason. And rule number 3, use the open diapason. The open diapason is the most reliable organ stop. If you're using one stop on its own, you won't hear the tuning issues. Whereas if you layer different stops, the inconsistencies in the pitch become more apparent. So my advice, if you play in a village church, is just to use one stop, and that would be the open diapason. If an organ hadn't been tuned for 5 years, for 10 years, if you just used that one stop, it would still sound beautiful. The afternoon sun is just peeping out for me as I conclude my visit to another of England's hidden gems. All that's left for me to say is that I hope that you feel inspired to visit these places yourself and to keep the spirit of these beautiful ancient buildings alive. If you enjoy my work, just below this video you'll see a link to my PayPal donations page. If you click on that, you can support my work, and it's the best way of doing so. So until next time, cheerio.